Okay, councilors and staff, we're ready to call the meeting to order. I call the meeting to order. Could I have an approval of the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor Olson. Second by Councillor Thompson. On the question? All those in favor, please vote. All those in favor? Thank you. I'd like to move to the land acknowledgement. Who could be, Councillor Thompson, please?
Okey dokey. We would like to respectfully acknowledge that Quispamsis exists on the traditional territory of the Wolastoqey, Maliseet, and Mi'kmaq people, whose ancestors, along with the Passamaquoddy tribes, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s. We would like to take this moment to pay respect to the elders, past and present, and the descendants of the traditional territory. And maybe we remind ourselves, just a second. There you go. I just could move this over. Get over. Okay. I can see it over. And may we remind ourselves of the important work we have before us tonight, and may we make good decisions without prejudice or bias, and always in the best interests of our community, which we are here to serve.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. And my name's Mary Schreier, and I'm the Deputy Mayor, and I will be chairing the meeting tonight. So I do have a few comments before we start the meeting. So I guess, first of all, I'd like to wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day, and I hope the luck of the Irish is with you. Maybe buy a lotto ticket today. If you're like me, I was running around trying to find some green. But thank you, and have a nice St. Paddy's Day. And I'd like to, secondly, thank our staff for their professionalism and readiness to handle the heavy rains that we've been enduring and the high winds. These conditions are extreme at times, and our crews have done a tremendous job trying to clear the catch basins, removing debris from the roads to keep it safe, and also on our trails. So thank you very much. We know that some in our community have been without power. That's never a good thing. But we appreciate the work of MB Power, again, in these high winds, trying to restore power as quickly and safely as possible. And it's always a good reminder that we should always have some type of kit, 72-hour preparation kit in your house when power goes out. So on March 8th, Quispamsis and communities all around the world celebrated International Women's Day. And I wanted to acknowledge the accomplishment of some of our very own in Quispamsis. I was in Fredericton attending the International Women's Day conference or celebrations, and three of our residents were being honored. And it was, I was very proud to stand with them. The first one was Deputy Chief Mary Henderson, was honored for her work in equality, and Sergeant Kelly McIntyre from our Canada-Cases Police Force as well. They were both presented with the VIVE Awards, which they only present about 6 of these awards. So to have 2 from our police force, who work in sexual violence, equality for women. I was very proud. And then I also want to acknowledge Kate McLeod, who I was surprised. I didn't know about Kate. She was receiving, she goes to KV High, and she was honored also at the International Women's Day as one of the top submissions across the province for its student submission on gender equality. So I was really, really proud to see Kate get that award. Also, there were two events in our town, both of the results of these events on International Women's Day. Myself, I was there, Councilor-elect was there. There were many women there. Both recipients, one was the Quispamsis Lions Club. They were able to get the fruits of some dollars. And the KV food basket on our walk around the Qplex was presented with food for the region. So very important, our food security. So I'd like to thank everyone who took time, whether it was to call your mom, call your girlfriend, call your wife, just to thank you. More good news, we have a new fire chief. And I don't know if you all saw that, but Chief Sean White has accepted the role, and we're very pleased to have him. He's been a member of the KB Fire Department in various roles for over 25 years. So if you get an opportunity to read his bio, it's quite amazing, perfect for the job. And on that note, we have a new deputy chief named earlier today, Karen Trecarton. Deputy Chief Trecarton has more than 2 decades with the KB Fire Department experience, starting as a volunteer firefighter. Quispamsis recognizes the important contributions made by volunteers throughout our community and organization. So Chief Trecarton went from a volunteer and now is deputy chief. What a role model for the women out there. We'd like to also recognize that we have a lot of volunteers in our community. Residents, community groups, schools, churches are encouraged to nominate an outstanding volunteer from their organization for the 2026 Quispamsis Volunteer Recognition Awards. These volunteers will be invited by Mayor and Council to attend a special presentation in their honor. The Volunteer Recognition Award nomination form is available through the application and form page on our website. So I can't stress again, to give your time is very precious, and we appreciate all our volunteers. So the deadline for that is April 6th. So if you have somebody in your mind and think, you know what, I'm going to put their name in, just do it. The Fundy Winterfest this year is a terrific collaboration between communities in our region, and it has become a wonderful way to enjoy many activities and events. You can follow Fundy Winterfest on our Facebook to see what's going on. So that brings my notes to a conclusion, and we're going to move on with the agenda. And I'd like to welcome everybody that's present here tonight. Thank you for coming. And anybody online, thank you for joining us tonight. So I'm just gonna go next to disclosure of interest. Do we have any disclosure of interest on council? Seeing there is none, we'll move on to public hearings. Oh, sorry, presentation, request to address council. Tonight, we have Bernard Bukala, who's going to address council. Would you like to come to the podium? Now, council would have received your correspondence that you wanted to speak to us, so please, the podium is yours, and you have 10 minutes.
Your Worship, Ms. Schreier, and Council. Through you, Madam Chair, I welcome the opportunity to address Council on the Gondola Point Vision Survey. The municipality is seeking guidance from its citizens on this subject. We have a preliminary report from our consultants. We as citizens in general were not aware during the first consultation with the consultants that the municipality owns a pier and a right-of-way at 435 Gondola Point Road. That begs the question, how we as citizens can give input, read the vision that the municipality, and we will have in regarding for the pier, which is a hidden jewel in a box. A bit of background on this pier. It was owned by the federal government until 12 years ago. The federal government was no longer interested in same, so the province had the opportunity to acquire this pier, which they declined. 12 years ago, town council, in its wisdom, became aware of the potential and acquired same. However, the 12-year period that the municipality owned the pier, this jewel was lost in the memory banks of the town in general. Therefore, I'm requesting council to inform our consultants to include the pier with the second phase of this study. This pier would be a site for all the municipality residents to enjoy. That would be the parents and their children, grandchildren being taken by their grandparents, and the same for great-grandparents, which we are. I have a request to our engineering department to provide the right-of-way and pier dimensions, as we only have the outline as shown on the map. Okay. Further to that, we may have more access into the river than the actual outlines show on the various maps, depending on federal legislation. I will close with thanking town staff, Mr. Gary Logier, Ms. Linda Cormier, and Lisa McInnes, and the front staff of the town hall. They've been most helpful in me doing this presentation. I will welcome any questions council has on my presentation, and thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think we'll start with Mr. Logier. I believe he was in correspondence with you. So, Mr. Logier, if you could address some of the concerns, one about the outline, and two about the access river, and any other pertinent information you feel council needs to have on this one. And I'll put your mic on. There you go.
Thank you, through your worship. Mr. Buchveld had called us earlier a couple of weeks ago with regards to the input into the program that we had for the Gondola Point Road. And one of the things that we had discussed was that this first phase of the Gondola Point corridor was an exercise in connecting with the residents to seeing what they felt were priorities for the development of the corridor itself. The actual design, the detailed designs, haven't been finalized yet. That having been said, and it is further on the agenda this evening, the intent was that should council decide to proceed with a more detailed design, then our consultants would be looking at all municipally owned access points along the river. The pier, for example, the access to the particular pier area, our pumping stations, things of that nature, the Gondola Point Beach, and seeing how those could be best incorporated into a final version of a enhanced scenic route corridor. The wharf in question and the piers in question is essentially it's a water lot lease from the federal government. So the dimensions that are provided in the ground are really subject to the constraints of the approved lease by the feds. And we have that lease, as Mr. Buchveld mentioned, it's been in effect since 2014. And the access to that wharf area is under the municipal right-of-way as well. So if this were to be developed, it would be a case of developing the right-of-way down to the area. The grade would be sort of subject to what would be suitable for, is it vehicles, is it public access by foot? Then the water lot lease would enable the town then to decide what we wanted to do in the river system itself. There is no physical structure there. I doubt that any pier systems that remain would be suitable structurally for any sort of support of a particular use. So then what we would be looking for is if, as part of the scenic road development, the council of the day was looking to expend budget to create some type of a public access, be it a seasonal wharf or a launch point for kayaks or whatever, that would be a separate budget in itself. So at this stage of the process, should council decide to proceed, as I mentioned in subsequent memos tonight, this is an area that will be examined. We'll come back with different conceptual drawings, ideas. It's always much easier to do something on paper first than it is to sort of expend a lot of money. We'll look at all the access points and decide, what type of a cross-section, what type of amenities that we want to see along this particular road right away. So there's still a few substantial steps left before we get to the point of actually putting anything in the ground. The most substantial of which is once we get to a final cost, if council is going to see where that will fall within the budget and what year within our capital program would it fall. So we still have all kinds of time. And Mr. Buchveld's reminder for us about the wharf is well taken. So that's, unless council has specific questions, that's where we find ourselves this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Loger. Yes, the water lease is interesting with the federal government. So I have Councillor Miller, and then Councillor Bigger, then Councillor Luck, please. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship, or Deputy Mayor, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Bouqueville, for coming in and reminding us about this piece of land. And I'm quite encouraged from what I just heard from our Director of Engineering that this will also be included, unless I misheard here, as we look at different access points to the river, because that was part of this whole landscape to start with. So, will it get done in 1 or 2 years? Probably not, but the point is we know it's there now. It's been brought to everybody's attention. I thank you for that. And it's, and to be honest, that was 2014. I was here and I forgot about that too. So thank you for bringing this back up. And I do appreciate the comments by our Director of Engineering that it will be included when they look at the overall plan. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Bucheville, nice to see you. You came dressed nicer than me. I don't know why you do that. That makes me look bad. But anyway, nice to see you. Well, very true. And I blew that a long time ago, sadly. But anyway, I just would echo what Councillor Miller has said, and our Director of Engineering. I appreciate you coming in to kind of, sharpen our attention on this. I take the Director of Engineering's point to heart that, that initial phase is not so much about the specific assets along the Gondola Point road corridor, but rather just general what people's priorities are. But one thing that's really lucky for us is I think that we have residents, like yourself, who have a lot of passion for the natural beauty of our community, and who see the value in, the kind of development that could happen there. And I remember discussions previously, this is only my first term on council, but in the 5 years I've been here, I know there was discussion about that slip as a possible maybe second boat put in for the town, as to cooperate with Meenan's Cove or whatever. There has been some discussion that never really went any further than that. And when you mentioned you and your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, I wondered if you were going to go one more there, but you didn't. So. But anyway, thank you very much. And so, no, I'm appreciative of your passion for that project. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. And Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Bucheville, for coming. It's nice to see you, and I just wanted to echo what Councillor Miller and Councillor Bigger has already said. We do really appreciate you bringing this back up to bring it to our attention, because I know we've done a lot of discussion around Gondola Point and the possibilities down there. And I didn't know that even existed until you brought it to our attention, so I appreciate that. I'd actually like to make a motion, but then also I have a question. So I don't know what I should do first.
Do the question first,
Okay.
please.
So I guess it brings up kind of more of a point that are there other little pieces of land out there that in terms of corporate memory, we might lose, like, I guess, you know, having a resident bring something like this up just made me start thinking, like, are there other areas that we don't know about? And is there somewhere that we can keep it so that as people retire or what have you, we're not gonna lose some of those vital things that we have in our town? Is there do we have a process at this point?
I'm going to pass that over to Mr. Logan.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, the gentleman to my left manages what we have is an intensive GIS system for the town and its staff. So all of the municipally owned properties are actually flagged in a layer. This one actually is flagged in a layer. And even though our memories may be short, the cloud lives forever, or at least until Mr. Musk decides it shouldn't live anymore. But so there is a layer of municipally owned properties, and things like size, the dimensions, even just discussing with Mr. Colburn, that's a 17% grade down from the Canola Point Road to the water level, which is significant. That's more than a vehicle could tow with a boat. So our initial discussions, if I recall, back in 2014, where it would be more along the lines of a walking access, a kayak, a surfboard type or wakeboard type of access than more of a boat launch. But we do have that. And the other areas, as I mentioned, the pump stations are all flagged. I know the Director of Community Services has a significant plan for the Gondola Point Beach. And if Council will recall, we were also in discussions and exploring options with DTI to get access across the arterial so that can make it a fully comprehensive coast-to-coast type of an approach. So.
Thank you, Mr. Loge. Councillor Luck, you have a motion you wanted to put forward? You're on. No, it was on. Oh, so sorry. Now you're on.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. First, thank you, Mr. Loge. That makes me feel better. I just was curious because it was the first time I had heard about it. So I'm happy to hear that we do have all these little pearls that we own captured somewhere. So I would like to just make a motion that we pass this information along to staff and the consultants working on the scenic route for Gondola Point Road for future consideration. And I'd also like to thank Mr. Bucaville for bringing this to our attention again and reminding us that we have this beautiful piece of land and for presenting to us tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. I have a seconder. Councillor Olson, are you seconding? Okay. Oh, sorry, on the question, Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Welcome back, Mr. Bucaville. I too was a member of council in 2014 when you. I know, but I think my initial impression of that property was that it was on a hill and had difficult access to it. I wasn't familiar with the physical size, but I think this is an opportunity to actually put stakes in the ground and see what you can see with the eye, and if it is practical to be able to get people down there and make some use of the shoreline and that. But unfortunately, back then, I guess other priorities took place. And but this year, we're looking at doing some work on Gondola Point Road, and this has brought it back to the attention of everyone. And I thank you for that. So we'll wait and see what happens there. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Do I have a seconder, Councillor Olson, on the question? Please vote. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you very much for your engagement. We appreciate your time. Good evening. Okay, so we're now moving on to public hearing, rezoning. Rezoning of 302 Model Farm Road. I will first call upon Mr. Loge, or no, I'm sorry, Mr. Coburn, to come up and give a report. Correct?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through you to council. So this evening, we've reached the public hearing stage of a rezoning of 302 Mulder Farm Road. As indicated in my staff report, this particular property is the former Brunswick Nurseries property that the business has ceased since May of 2025. The property has since sold. The current property owner wishes to see it developed as residential. The property is currently flagged as neighborhood commercial in our zoning map, as indicated in my staff report. When we look at the permitted uses in the neighborhood commercial compared to the actual use that was on the property in terms of Brunswick Nurseries, they didn't align. It was actually a legal non-conforming use. So we could wait the duration. Once it's not legal non-conforming use continues to operate for 11 months, then the zoning actually goes back. However, in this particular case, it's quicker to move through a rezoning process. We did provide notice, obviously, in accordance with the Community Planning Act. We did receive one expression of concern. It wasn't so much regarding the actual land use or the rezoning. It was regarding the development and potential water coming off the Mulder Farm Road and then making its way down across the particular property owner's property. We did correspond with them to inform them that the concern has been received, and we've reached out to our engineering department to look into it. And also that it's important to note as the land develops, there will be a requirement of the property owners to adhere to ensuring that surface drainage is maintained on the property and directed into appropriate receiving channels, whether that's through the storm sewer system or open ditches. So the correspondence has been noted, and it obviously would be taken into consideration through the development of the land. At this stage, staff would be looking for to move forward at the end of the public hearing stage to give first and second reading to the particular rezoning request. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coburn. And now I'd like to call if there is anybody wishing to speak for or against this proposal, if you could please come forward and state your name and address. Do we need address? Just your name is fine. Thank you and welcome to our meeting.
Thank you. My name is Catherine Jankowski. Addressing council, I just want to thank you for all your hard work and dedication. It's a great community to live in, and there is no other. And I'm wearing jeans today, not as a discredit to you, but to make Mike feel better. I'm hiding behind a podium. Okay. So my husband and I, my husband is here, Luis Ferreira. We live at 309 Model Farm. Just to give you an idea of what's currently happening on our property in the last few years, we've been there for almost 5 years, I think, a little short of 5 years. And initially we didn't have any issues, but we've noticed either from the way that the water is forming from the other side of the road, the Model Farm Road, whether it's because the original plan that was probably erected then 25 years ago, maybe there's been some landfill in the culverts that are intended for water flow, or maybe there's just more water, or maybe the road is starting to slope because of wear and tear. But for whatever reason, in the last year, we've noticed a lot more water coming down our driveway instead of in the intended waterways on either side of the property. So we've also noticed that water not only seeps over the driveway, but under the driveway, and it's causing some erosion in our asphalt. Our driveway is really long and steep, so I can't imagine what it's going to cost us to fix that. So my concern is with the development of the properties across the street, I want council to be aware that it is affecting not just us, but our neighbors who are not present today. But we've been speaking with them that there is some kind of water acknowledgement in place before the development of these properties. For example, if there's a driveway or roadway across from my driveway, that's going to amplify the problem that I currently have. So somehow structurally, all of that needs to be dealt with, or else I'm going to have a huge problem. And also, I think part of my concern is there's less green space to absorb that water. So now there's going to be more water to deal with. The second part of my concern, which I didn't put in the email, but is tapping of the well water. And I don't know where that comes from. I have heard, it's by no means confirmed, that there are 3 wells on what was once Duncan's property. And I'm not sure if those wells will be tapped into for the water source for these new developments, and how that's going to affect us down below. Especially this summer was a dry summer. We were all kind of afraid our wells would go dry, and if the climate change continues to go in that direction, it becomes even more of a concern. So my purpose for being here today is just, one last thing. The email that I received from Jennifer Jarvis said that, and I quote, "The stretch of Model Farm Road will be reviewed for resurfacing in the next few years." And I don't know if that's before or after the development of these lots or property that's above us. So my ask is the consideration of water, both stormwater and well water, before the development. And if there's any civil engineering that needs to take place, that it takes place before, not after. I'm done.
Thank you very much. You have 3 times now, and then you can speak?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, continue the.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to continue, I need to ask 3 times. If there's anybody here or online that wishes to speak for or against. Anybody here wishing to speak for or against?
Yep, so now
So
do
that's it?
Yeah.
So now I'll have Mr. Colburn address some of your concerns, and he can respond. And can you hear Mr. Colburn all right back there? You can? Okay, great.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you for bringing the concerns forward through you to council. So the overall development plan for these particular properties is simply residential development, so single-family residential development that would require obviously submissions of building permits to the municipality. At this stage, in terms of when those developments will happen, basically it comes to a point of when they're purchased, and then obviously the timeline for development. So at this stage, there's been no formal applications come forward in terms of specific developments of these properties. Again, the ask is that we would be rezoning it back, or rezoning it to rural, to be more reflective of the actual zoning in that particular area, and recognizing this, that neighborhood commercial in that particular area is not fitting with the overall plan in terms of municipal plan and development for that particular area. In terms of the layouts of development, we would be looking at, when the applications come in, we would be looking at driveway locations. They also, every development has to provide to the town stormwater management plan or a surface drainage plan, which indicates how the water will be directed off of those properties and where they would be going. So those concerns that have been brought forward, that can be flagged against this property, and then we would be reviewing the concerns accordingly. Obviously, when it comes to stormwater management and the capacity of these existing ditches, has been indicated, the concerns that were brought forward have been submitted to our engineering department, to our engineering manager, who I would imagine will be working with the Public Works to just examine the overall area to make sure the ditches are being maintained and flowing accordingly. So that's that in terms of the stormwater management plan. That's where it currently sits. In terms of the well water, this development, this land, as mentioned, is being subdivided into 3 lots. In terms of the requirement for wells, what triggers a well study is when you start having developments that are in excess of 15 residential lots, which triggers an abbreviated, basically a desktop study. Anything more than 24 lots triggers an actual hydrogeological study. So the level of development that's anticipated and proposed for this particular area would not trigger the requirement to do extensive studies. We would be looking at simply single wells, normally one for each property. There has been occasions in the past where people who purchase lots, if the wells are there, more than likely they would take advantage of that in the fact of if the well is existing on the property and it's functioning and the water quality and quantity is there, rather than going through an expenditure of sinking a brand new well, they will obviously make use of those. So at this stage, I'm not aware specifics as to where the well locations are on those properties, but that is something that obviously would come out through the process of development. But in terms of actually triggering a requirement to launch a specific well study, it doesn't fall within the regulational parameters for this level of development when you're talking about 3 lots and single residential development.
Thank you very much. I believe we have some questions. I'll start with Councillor Luck. Your question?
Yeah. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Colburn. I appreciate just putting our minds at ease a little bit in terms of the process, so at least we know. I do want to thank the residents for bringing this concern forward. And it was alluded to that Ms. Jarvis had alluded to that down the road we were going to be paving that stretch. And I believe, if memory serves me correct, we had a similar complaint further up when we were doing some paving on Model Farm Road. Yeah. So I guess I'm just, to put everyone's mind at ease in terms of dealing with the water and undermining the driveway. Can you just kind of walk us through, I know it's not going to be on the docket for a few years, but what the plan is and, are we going to address some of that runoff? Because this isn't, kind of an isolated incident. I think just the way that water flows downhill, unfortunately, they're on the bottom side of the hill. What we'll be doing when we do repave that section to make sure that we mitigate the water, if you can speak to that. Thanks.
Yeah, so through you, Deputy Mayor. So in terms of where it fits on the docket in terms of the capital program, obviously I would defer to Director of Engineering with that. But in terms of the actual process when it comes to the capital projects, the level of effort that goes into the actual engineering side of things, one of the components of that process is we actually undertake a stormwater management study. So what we normally do is we collect obviously the information in terms of the existing infrastructure, the existing stormwater infrastructure that's in place, so the ditches, but we also look beyond the actual right-of-way limits. And if council will recall in the budget, we had the opportunity and are able to purchase a drone. That allows us now to actually fly that entire corridor, which provides us data that goes beyond the actual right-of-way. So now we're looking back into the properties, whether it's on the uphill side of Model Farm Road to the downhill side. That allows us to actually take a stormwater analysis that looks at all the water coming in, where it's coming from, and then allows us to develop models that will allow us to adjust stormwater infrastructure accordingly. So obviously we would look at the water that's coming in, the flow velocity, and then the sizing of the pipes and how that needs to be adjusted. Then we would also look at obviously where it's being discharged. So if it's obviously going through residential properties, we would look at impacts there and are there ways to mitigate that. So all that is a part of that process.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. One other just follow-up question is, in the interim, is there anything, and maybe there's nothing we can do, but knowing that right now there's issues that potentially is going to undermine their driveway, like is there stuff that we can do as a municipality or as a town to make sure that whatever's happening now is mitigated?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, and so what we have asked the engineering department to do is through the engineering managers to go out and to assess the area, again, to look at the ditches, look at the pipes to make sure they're flowing properly. And at this level, we would be looking at maintenance of the ditches and the culverts. So that's something that we can look at as an interim solution to make sure the water's flowing properly, that there's no obstructions of the culverts and those types of things. And we'd also look at where the water sources are coming into those ditches. So if, in some cases, if we have the ability to maybe make them a little deeper for capacity purposes, or introduce things like rock line to allow for better sediment control and erosion. So those are things that we can do through a regular maintenance process. And again, I can defer to the Director of Engineering if he has any other magic solutions, but that is normally our process in those particular situations, just not for this one, but sort of across the municipality as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. For council, you do have the written report from PAC. We're not required to read that tonight. So we'll move on. Is there a motion? Councillor Olson, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would like to move first reading.
Do I have a seconder on the motion? Councillor Miller, thank you. On the question? Is everyone ready? Okay, please vote. Oh, you're on the questions? Thank you. Councillor Beggar?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just through you to our planning manager, Director of Planning. It's just more of a question out of curiosity. There was the foundation elevation variance that was granted when this, I assume when this house was first built in '96. The staff report indicated that. And now, of course, the current owners of the house they didn't agree to that back in that time. And that doesn't seem to really be entering too much into the discussion tonight anyway, because of course the staff are applying themselves, as you outlined, to try to mitigate any water, problems and to, as you always do. But I just wondered about sort of the impact of something like that over the course of time, where we have sort of, homes that have had these kinds of waivers that have been sought in the process of development back in the day, whatever. And the degree to which those things still enter into when ownership has maybe changed hands a couple of times. What is, just as a matter of policy, I just was curious about what your perspective is on the sort of the gravitas or the, the impact that continues to have kind of as we move forward with these kinds of things. Thanks.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you,
Put your
Councillor
mic on.
Baker, for the question. So these particular agreements, old harmless agreements, they are a condition of approvals to development. They're in line with the requirements of the bylaw. So our current zoning bylaw, and I would anticipate the previous zoning bylaws, have a requirement whereby the elevation of the main floor of the dwelling or structure is to be at least 1 meter above the center line of the road. If you can't meet that, then there's a provision where you enter into a whole harmless agreement. The intent of those whole harmless agreement is to bring an awareness to the purchase of the to the property owners that there is this particular situation for which the property does not meet the requirements of the bylaw with respect to development. So they run with the property. So as the property transfers, obviously they're binding and registered against the property, so they're binding on heirs, successors, and assigns. There is still an obligation, obviously, from the town perspective as we move through climate change and those types of things. We have to recognize stormwater management. So there's still a policy and a practice to obviously adhere to the best practices possible as not to actually, convey larger volumes of water than would naturally or sort of flow in that particular area. So there's a cognizant level of that. But also I would just draw attention to, in those particular situations, there is also under the Local Governance Act, Section 177, which refers to sort of an indemnity to liability, particular with respect to stormwater. If it's the natural course and the natural flow of the water, then there's that as well. So there's still, the agreements are in place as an awareness, but there's obviously still a responsibility and onus to manage stormwater properly, and that is the best practice of the municipality that we follow.
Can I just add to my comment there?
Yes, go ahead. No, I'll put you on.
Thank you, yeah. No, thanks very much for that. And I just wanted to say too that, and perhaps it's just as a means of comfort to the residents, but I really appreciate the balance that the town strives to strike, as you just outlined there, between, sort of being concerned about residents. I mean, for example, we're not saying, oh, well, 30 years ago, someone signed a waiver and so too bad for you. That's not the approach at all that I'm hearing here. And so I'm very appreciative of that. As usual, the town is doing everything it can, I think, to try to, meet people where they're at. So I thank you for that.
Thank you. We have Councillor Thompson, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The, I'm reading the language attached to that particular property, and we have several of those, hold harmless. But they're attached to the deed, are they not?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, so they're attached to the actual property registration itself. So they can be attached to the deed, but normally they're registered against the property. So as subsequent purchasers of that property, they run with the property. That is correct. Yep.
Thank you.
So we have a motion on the table, do we not? Okay, we had a seconder. So on the question, we've done that, so I'll call for the vote, please.
And there's the consideration of second reading of that as well, if council wishes to do so. Just Councillor Bigger. And you've got it. Councillor Bigger? Oh, got it.
Motion carried, 7-0. Councillor Olson,
Second reading, please.
second by Councillor Donovan. Question? Please vote. Motion carried 7-0, so thank you, Mr. Colburn, and thank you for coming and being engaged with us, and any questions, follow-ups that you have, you can always call Mr. Colburn. Thank you. Have a good evening. Okay, so we're moving along. And if I can bring it up, we're moving along to minutes of the previous meeting. Did I miss something, or is that correct? Yeah, okay. Councillor Donovan, moved by Councillor Donovan, second by Councillor Bigger. On the question. Seeing there is none, please vote. Motion carried 7-0. So we're moving on to public comments.
Just number 8, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, I jumped.
Just a little bit.
There,
Yeah, there you go.
right here. Yeah, okay, sorry. Item 8, we're on Gondola Point Road corridor project. So I would like to start this off with perhaps an update from Mr. Loge on where we're at on this. And I believe that what you're looking for tonight is for council to give direction as to where the next step will take us. So, Mr. Loge, please.
The Gondola Point Road project, if we sort of summarize, is essentially an infrastructure project that started out to one of the higher requested streets in the municipality for resurfacing, recognizing the fact that we had 4 pump stations along the Gondola Point Road that had to be repaired, the infrastructure associated with it, potential disruption to underground infrastructure prior to doing any work on the surface. So as part of the review, we felt it was the opportunity to take some social engagement and see what are the priorities for the residents of the particular area. We engaged the services of Englobe to look at a 3-part process. The first one is looking at the general area as a whole, looking at some input with respect to potential designs. The part B, which was actual detailed designs of whatever selection of option is there. And then the part C, which was the contract administration when the time comes to go to tender. The input process was significant. It was one of the better attended and better resourced opportunities for public engagement that we've seen in a while. I think it's in no part to the concerted effort of involving a social engagement firm, but also introduction of a social engineering platform that they used, Social Pinpoint. The feedback that we received was that the majority of the residents did see that resurfacing as a priority, but they felt that their potential was there, and over 50% of the residents felt that some type of a public access, public trail would be useful along the roadway. And in reaching that decision, there are different other amenities that were considered. You know, public access point, as we talked to a little earlier, looking at climate change issues that may arise. We recognize, I think, the last major spring freshet, portions of the Gondola Point Road were underwater. So there's some climate change issues that would really want to come into play. Erosion control on some of the sections of the road that are directly adjacent to the river, again, impacted by climate change. We saw some AT considerations beyond just a straightforward widening of the road shoulder for public access. We're looking at things along the roadway that would actually enhance the traffic control, options that may involve, narrowing some of the road right-of-way to slow the traffic down. We also looked at the impact in the general area with respect to stormwater control. A lot of the crossroad culverts were designed by, and I use the word designed loosely, were installed by the Department of Transportation back when the road was a provincial highway. And essentially what it was is the culverts were put in wherever the water crossed the road. And what we would want to do is look at the corridor as a whole and say, okay, are there ways to either rationalize or proper size the crossroad culverts to reduce the potential for flooding, damage due to backup of the storm sewer. So all these issues came up during the public engagement session. And the consultants had recommended to us that, in their opinion, the most widely accepted option that was presented was that the town should proceed with a multi-use trail on the Gondola Point Road that took advantage of some public access amenities, but also took advantage of stormwater management and climate change issues. Staff has reviewed their recommendations. We've looked at the corridor as a whole, right from the Rossay border down to the Gondola Point Beach. We feel that, from a staff perspective, that it is a significant jewel, as Mr. Buchveld mentioned a little earlier, for the community. In looking at planning and traffic control issues, it was agreed that the speed along the Gondola Point Road should be controlled better. There's no need for that to be a high speed, particularly corridor, because most of the traffic is locally generated. So that was one of the things that we came into play. In further discussions with the consultants and the multi-use trail, there were some concerns brought forward with respect to location of the trail, particularly with properties that may have a short frontage along the Gondola Point Road. And by narrowing the road lane widths, the consultants are confident that we can actually, I'll use the term meander, any sort of a trail in and away from properties to avoid significant damage. We also have to recognize that a lot of the properties that are encroaching on the Point Road are recognizing that they are actually encroaching on private property. So there is a two-way street, pardon the pun on this. So we're at the stage now where staff and our consultants are seeking direction from council. I think it was mentioned a little earlier this evening, this is not a project that would be completed next year. It's likely not a project that would be completed in 2027. We're looking at a project that's going to be in excess of $6-7 million by the time you get to it. More if we look at enhanced amenities or climate change issues or stormwater management issues. In our recent discussions of grant funding opportunities, there are climate change funds available that we may be able to leverage. So at this stage, what we want to do is task our consultants with an actual design option. That is to say, okay, what are the pressure points? Where Are we looking at stormwater issues? Where would we be potentially looking at climate change issues? Where are possible amenities to take advantage of, such as public access points? Where are pinch points for the trail itself? And all these exercise will come up with a detailed design. They'll come up with costing estimates that can be brought to council for a budget deliberation. As part of the process, the consultants have identified that they are on board with sourcing out funding opportunities. So basically, we're really at the infancy of this particular project in that we're looking to see if council wishes to proceed with the development of the Gondola Point Road as using the initial terms of scenic road. From a budget perspective, the input process, there's still about $5,000 left on the Englobe project that would be used to finalize the conceptual. Upland, our social engagement consultants, still have about $5,000 left in their budget to actually seek public input with whatever final design is selected. The actual significant cost that we would be looking at is about $45,000, which I've identified in the memo, for the detailed design. And that would be an exercise that would take place throughout the spring and summer and have a cost ready for the fall budget deliberations in 2026. Looking at the costs and in discussions with the town administrator and our treasurer, we can easily reallocate a little bit of money from our street capital program in 2026 to address this without looking for extra funds. We are confident that this work is really a complement to our street capital program, and so we don't have any hesitancy in making that particular recommendation. So I guess the ball is in council's court now. Do we wish to proceed with the Gondola Point Road as a corridor with a multi-use trail? Or do we wish to step back and look at a less intensive rehabilitation of the street, which, as I mentioned at the onset, is essentially in high priority need of resurfacing at this stage of the game?
Thank you, Mr. Loge. There is a lot. It's a big price tag moving forward. There's a lot of items that you've identified there. So I'm going to open it to questions from council. If anybody has any questions they would like to ask Mr. Loge, we'll start with Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I bet you knew I was going to press my button. So when it comes to Gondola Point, I mean, realizing that there's only so much money to go around, my 5 years of council, I've been telling people since the day I started that Gondola Point will be paved once all the pumping stations are fixed. Just bear with us. So 5 years later, I mean, the road is a mess. So I think everyone would agree that the road needs to be resurfaced and resurfaced properly in terms of we can't just slap asphalt. It needs to be ripped up and done properly for drainage and all that stuff, which is going to be a small fortune. And then stormwater management. So I kind of feel like those are the two most critical, important things because of the infrastructure. But I also think based on all the conversations we had at the Active Transportation Working Group and with the Master Transportation Plan, when we talk about safe infrastructure and when you're looking at what the province is talking about with active transportation like framework that they're working on, I would think it would be irresponsible of us because people live in that area. And right now, you're kind of walking on a shoulder. So I guess my vision for the future is that, especially on such a busy road, that we would have a nice surface to drive on. But as we said in our active transportation or our master transportation plan, we're flipping our vision of being car-centric to people-centric. So we need to also make sure that the infrastructure we put in is safe for people to walk along that street, to get to the beach, to get to the dog, the dog beach, to, explore the different areas along the shoreline. Again, I guess I'm just really hesitant because I do think, and, I don't expect, a lot beyond that, I know that's expecting a lot, but I just think that we would be kicking ourselves in the future if we do not explore, proper road surface, stormwater management, and some form of safe active transportation. Just because when I think of the Trans-Canada Trail And then where that can, it's, you know, at the end of Gondola Point Road, it's only a small section of the 119 that leads back to Matthews Cove. Like it's, you know, I can see it in my head. It might not be in my lifetime, but I think in the future, we will have these connections throughout the town. And I do think, because I've seen it already when we've done things where you look back and go, you know, we did it because of the cost, and now we're kicking ourselves because we didn't see like far enough in the future to make sure that we have safe infrastructure for people to move their bodies and get to different places beyond the vehicle. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. You know, again, I know it's a lot, but, and again, I guess my other comment is, I'm not really sold on having a trail on the water side. I run that road, and right now it's on the other side. And I think in terms of views, you have better views from the other side because now you're not looking into someone's window, you're looking over their house onto into the water. So I don't know what the solution is. I'm not the expert, I'm not the engineer. You know, I think it's a beautiful area and I would love to see us do it right, but I definitely think we will be kicking ourselves if we just pave it and then look at, like after it's done, I think we're gonna be saying we really should have made sure that there was safe infrastructure for people to move, you know, and use that space beyond the car. So that's my 2 cents, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Luck, and I'm going to go to Councillor Miller, please.
Sorry.
No.
I wasn't quite ready. I was sure Mr. Bigger hit his button before me.
Lining up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Loche, and for the information. And I do like the idea. My challenges are going to be not shocking to everybody. A couple things. We've now got multiple items that come up after the budget. This one, they're actually asking to cut from the capital. My question is, in anything that we need not cut, my opinion is our streets. Our recreation, second to none, everything else. I would like to, hopefully, we can find $45,000 somewhere within our other budget, because I do think we're having challenges on our streets to start with, and this year's not helping us with the freeze and thaw. I also like to point out that we've got a lot of streets that we haven't finished yet, and I'll talk about federal provincial funding in the next chapter we're having. So Millennium Drive, original plans, it was supposed to be done by this year. We're a third done, so we haven't finished that one. Maintenance Cove Road, we're in phase 2.5 out of 3, 2.5 to 3 out of 4 or 5. We haven't finished that one. So we got a lot of major projects, and we've got a lot of other major projects that people are looking at. And I say as a council, I'm not saying it's directly each department, but we've got a lot of things going on. So with all these things going on, and I'm jumping a bit to my lack of federal and provincial funding, we're in trouble if unless you want to have a debt load of 10, 12%. So I'd like to do it because I think we have to have the plan. We got to know what we're going at, and I'm okay with the money. I'm just hoping that somehow within our $38 million budget, and I know we've delayed hiring people. They haven't hired as January, so we may have some flexibility there, because I think roads is one of the things we probably shouldn't cut. So that's my comment. Thanks.
Mr. Watson, did you want to make a comment?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Councilor Miller and to others. I appreciate the comment for sure. And to your question, I'm confident that the reallocation of $45,000 on a $37 million budget can be accommodated without compromising our street program.
Next, I have Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to make a motion, if
Okay,
that's all right.
Yes, we can. And Councillor Bigger, you'll go on the question, or did you want to make your statement now? Okay.
I move the council direct Englobe Consultants to proceed to Part B of their engineering proposal based on an upset fee of $45,911. Englobe is to base the proposed upgrades and corridor development of the Gondola Point Road to a multi-use trail cross-section. Phasing and budget allocations will be brought to Mayor and Council during the design stage and prior to the 2027 budget deliberation process.
Second by Councillor Bigger. So we're going to go on the question. And so Councillor Bigger on the question.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. We seem to all be singing from the same song sheet here, more or less. I agree with Councillor Luck's comments. We certainly want to get that road paved properly and get the right infrastructure as a priority. I agree with Councillor Miller that I take the Director of Engineering's point about the cooperative nature of this upset fee to Englobe regarding putting the proper plan together is cooperative with the street capital program, but I take the councillor's point as well that we certainly, I agree, it's one of the last places we would want to, sacrifice funds off budget. So thanks to the CAO for giving us some confirmation of what we can do there. So I agree with that. It is, it seems like the right thing to do. As Councillor Miller says, we need a plan. The staff, the consultants, and over 50% of the respondents from the general public agree that the enhanced multi-use trail cross-section idea is the preferred option that's been considered and presented. So in that regard, it seems to be the best sort of social buy-in we have about what to do down there currently. And so if these funds contribute towards moving us to the next step of that plan, and we, as Councillor Miller has pointed out, we hire consultants for a lot of things, and there's a little bit of a pinprick sometimes about that of pain, but I certainly support this, and so I'm glad to second that motion, and I appreciate all the hard work the staff is doing. The numbers are the numbers can be a little scary under the financial implications that the staff report puts forward about the cost of doing a 4.5 kilometer rebuild of that road, that corridor, with a 5-year street capital program of $800,000 kind of proposed, but saying, well, we would have to actually increase that under the circumstances. There's no doubt about it. It's a bit scary, but we just need to move the ball down the field to the next zone and see what comes out of that. And so it seems like the proper investment under the circumstances. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. I'm going to remove myself from the chair. Councillor Thompson, if you'll please take over, and I'm going to make a couple of comments, and then Mr. Loge, you had a few more comments. So I looked at this and I said, there's a lot, as I said before, there's a lot there to unpack. I mean, we're talking about stormwater, we're talking about climate change, we're talking about a safe path, we're talking about houses that have hardly any land, and meandering trails, as you mentioned. I'm concerned with the design part of this, and I can't stress it enough from the engagement and what I heard at the, here in this council room about people are concerned. And so I want to make sure that my comments are that nothing moves forward until we have more engagement. There has to be a social license to want to do this on behalf of the residents. So I just wanted to put my comments in because I think it's important, because we know what the price tag is, looks really high. So we may have to prioritize, we will. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? And so those are my comments on it, and I'll go back to Mr. Loge and resume the chair. Thank you. Mr. Loge?
Thank you, through your worship, to council as a whole. A couple of points, and I don't mean to presuppose the design to Councillor Luck's question with regards to where the trail would be. Part of the design is going to have to take into account stormwater issues and the only major ditches on the high side of the roadway, and it may make engineering sense to put the trail on top of the stormwater system that we put there, so we could essentially see a trail on either side, both, or alternating side to side depending on what we do. Particularly if we look at traffic control and traffic calming issues, and don't get too hung up on, well, you're walking here, then you cross the street and you walk across, you cross some more. Those are the types of things that the design stage will come into play. We may have a stretch of homes that are such close proximity that will say, hey, we're better served by being on the other side of the road. So this is design stage is going to answer all those questions for us, so that we're not, didn't mean to give the impression that we've presupposed it to be on one side only. This is a comprehensive look at the whole thing. The second point, from a budget perspective, is that the nature of the street is such that we can easily phase it and fall within our budget allocations. For example, and we've talked about it in the last budget year, the first leg from the Gondola Point Beach to the bottom of the Quispamsis Hill is a logical first phase, and that gives us I'll say, we can bite it, whether we can chew it all in one chew, but we can take a bite out of a budget of that size with an approach, and we can see where the rest of it takes. So I think this is the most important logical first step, is to let us know exactly what's in front of us. What are we eating? What flavor is it? What parts do we eat first? And I think this is where we want to set our menu, is this exercise, and I think it's a good first step.
I'm just going to remove myself from the chair again. Councillor Thompson, I just want to follow up on that. But it is in the power of council to decide how they want to see the design come out.
Council should have input into the design, yes. I hesitate to suggest that council should make engineering decisions based on opinions or personal feelings rather than solid engineering background. So the designs will have specific engineering rationale for it, and staff will ensure that we look at all aspects of the, using your term, social license that we have when we do the particular work. This is not something that is intended to create hardships for anyone, but there will be some inconveniences associated with the development, no matter where we are. Some people, even on the high side of the river, will look at it and go, I don't want somebody walking across the front of my property, or somebody will say, listen, I want to drive 65, 70 kilometers because I want to get home in time to watch Oprah or whatever it is. But there will be some inconveniences with it. But I really must reiterate that council should be cautious of not adhering to the professional opinions that are being submitted to them, whether it's financial or engineering or planning or otherwise. That's why we're here. So just my caution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Loge. Councillor Olson, you had a question? Comment?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think this road is going to offer a great challenge to all of council to balance the aesthetics of the whole exercise and the practicality of it. We've got roads that are straight asphalt roads that are in dire need of repairs, and sometimes they take 3 and 4 years to complete a section. And this one is going to be a real exercise, and I hope it's not an exercise in futility, because it's going to be complex, and it's going to need a real hard look at just what is going to be recommended by the engineering consultants, along with our staff. And so I'm just keeping an open mind for it all, and see how it develops. But I have a bit of an engineering background myself, so I can just assume what is going to have to take place here, and it's not going to be an easy straight line down the road with some pavement on it. So I'll hold my any more comments until later on.
Okay. I think we've wrapped this up. So we have a motion on the table. And we'll call for the vote. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Loge, for all your input. We're moving on to the draft of the political employee.
Deputy Mayor,
Yeah, sorry.
sorry. Number 11B is this gentleman here.
Okay,
So
would you like
maybe
to
a
move it up?
motion to bump that up.
Okay, council, the clerk has just informed me that we have somebody waiting in the public for number 11B. Would council be okay to move that up? Moved by Councillor Thompson or Councillor Luck? Second, Councillor Thompson. All those in favor?
Just a hand, good,
Just a hand vote, please.
thank you.
It does have to be unanimous, doesn't it? Change the agenda?
Motion carried, you're good?
Yeah.
Yep, we're good. Okay, so we're going to move on to 11B. This is to an amendment to amend the existing development agreement to allow for automobile sales at 11 Enterprise Drive. So I'm going to ask Mr. Colburn if he would like to bring staff up to date or council up to date on the request. I'm right here, okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Colburn.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to council. So this is a request to amend an existing development agreement for this particular property to permit the sale of automobiles on the property. It is situated on Enterprise Drive, which is light industrial. This particular type of use is, if I recall correctly off the top of my head, discretionary, so it's gone through PAC. PAC has supported the request and provide a decision, and part of that decision involves the amendment to the agreement. This isn't a Section 59, so this isn't a rezoning, doesn't require public hearings. It's a development agreement that's a requirement of the provisions of the zoning bylaw. It's before council for a couple of things. One is to inform them of an agreement that the town is being requested to enter into, and then give approval to it in terms of the ability for the mayor and the clerk to execute the agreement on behalf of the town. So bring some the information to them so they have an opportunity to review it, to see the terms and conditions, and then authorize the actual execution of it. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. Councillor Donovan.
Thank you. I would move that council accepts the request to amend the existing development agreement to allow automobile sales at 11 Enterprise Drive, PID number 30236723, subject to the terms and conditions of the PAC's notice of decision, which was dated January 20th, 2026.
And I have a seconder with Councillor Olson. Second. So on the question, Councillor Love.
Thank you, Deputy.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm in agreement, but I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to just, again, remind all of us how busy Palmer Brook is getting. And I know I've brought this up before, and I know it's a provincial highway, but it concerns me greatly because it's a death trap. So as we add more amazing businesses to that area, I think sooner than later, we're going to have to work with the province to figure out how we better enhance the safety of that highway. Because again, there's a lot of new things that are going out there already. And like, again, lots of traffic, and it's a pretty scary place to be when, you know, people are trying to turn left towards Hampton or right in the morning. There's a lot of traffic. So I know we're trying to do our best in terms of addressing it, but I just wanted to make sure that we keep that top of mind, because it isn't a real fun road to drive on, because it's quite dangerous. So again, I'm all for this. Love to see economic development in the community, but I definitely think we need to work with the province to make sure that for the long term, that road is safe for everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. Councillor Thompson, and then we'll go to the Director of Engineering Works.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a little question for the proponent. This is on your same property, Lou? It is. Yeah, I thought so. Thank you.
Thank you. Director of Engineering and Works, Mr. Logier.
Thank you. To Councillor Luck's point with regards to the Palmer Brook, the most recent work that we did at the intersection of the Elliott Road, and we saw the turning lane, as part of that package, there's a comprehensive traffic review to reduce the speed limits down to 70 kilometers an hour. The biggest issue is the fact that it's coming off of Route 1, which is, and it goes down to 90, it's getting it to that 70. As part of the provisions of this spring's work, we've also are bringing on stream a radar advisory sign at the changeover from the 90 to the 70 to advise resident or the motorists that it is a 70 km/h posting. So what we're trying to do is use all of the tools available in our own municipal toolbox before we go to your point with respect to getting the province on board. So it is an area of concern. We've agreed. We're going to see what we can do from our perspective to get the notifications down there, to get the speed limits down, particularly as soon as the folks have ability to transition off of the highway. Certain traffic highway code designs allow for a certain transition. We're going to try to leverage that as soon as that transition ends, get it into our limits for speed control that we can do. And one of those methods is going to be with a radar sign.
Okay, we've called for the question. Please vote. We need to,
11, so we'll go back up to 11B, or
it has two.
8B. Yeah,
No, but doesn't it have two?
no, just one.
Okay.
Just one on this one.
And the vote hasn't come up? Did it come up on
Yep.
yours? Oh, okay.
Yep,
Motion
motion carried.
passed. Mr. DeFazio, motion passed, 7-0. Thank you for coming. Good night. So we're going back up to 8B, draft employee political involvement or policy. And I think we'll start off with Mr. With Mr. Watson, giving us a quick update on the policy.
Sure thing. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to council. Draw your attention to the staff report that came along with your package, as well as both the initial version that we had presented and talked about and made revisions on, and then the updated version also in your package. Version 1 and version 2 are, as I said, both there. We believe that version 2 respects all the comments and suggestions made on the initial review. However, I think, from a preliminary perspective, where this policy is a new one, it's political activity for employees policy, we would note the need to confirm who this policy best belongs to first, just to have that conversation and make sure you're comfortable with, yes, it should either be with the CAO and the executive team, or whether you wish to retain approval and management authority for it. So that'd be kind of our first pass. And if, depending on the answer to that question, either there's some comments that we will take back for final revision and we can bring you back the final copy if it's with us. If it's with you, then we would, again, take the suggestions and then refine it and bring you back for more discussion and then your approval as opposed to ours. So,
Just on that, so let's do it one at a time. So let's discuss that.
sure, yeah. I'd
And so
recommend so.
that we can decide on where the authority lies with this policy. So, and then we'll continue, have Mr. Watson continue on. So, Councillor Bigger, if you have any questions about that?
Well, I'm prepared to make a motion in terms of the first point made by the CAO as is listed here, that council confer approval and management authority for the proposed employee political activity policy to the CAO and executive leadership team.
Do I have a seconder for that? Second by, oh, sorry, Councillor Thompson? Okay, so on the question, Councillor Luck, you have, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm in agreement with that. I just wanted to clarify that if the policy were ever to change, would that come back to council at that point?
Mr. Watson?
Thank you, your Deputy Mayor, and through you to Councillor Lush. Pause long enough to get rid of the reverb there. Certainly, if there were substantive changes that change the overall direction, I think it would behoove the CAO to come back to council for advice or to advise of those changes. But by transferring the responsibility for policies where you are doing so, you are asking the CEO and the executive team to look after the ongoing management, including revision and approvals of changes. Thank you.
Can I just comment on that?
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the clarity. And I just wanted to thank you and staff for taking our feedback for the last time and, adjusting the policy and the amendment. So anyway, I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Okay, so let's vote on that section of it. So I had a mover and a seconder on the question. We did. Please vote. Motion carried 7-0. And I'll have Mr. Watson continue with this presentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I appreciate the confidence you're showing in us to look after that one. And thanks to Councillor Luck too for mentioning that. Yep, I think we did incorporate the areas of concern into this now staff policy. So our next step is just to finalize that document. I don't foresee us making any further changes because it's already been through the executive team. You've had a look. If you do have any last thoughts, then we'd certainly welcome those as part of the process. But if you want to just leave it with us, then we're happy to take that on and look after it. Next step then would be we do recognize that council does deserve to have a policy around political activity for elected officials as well. And given the nature of our timing for election, there won't be time to get that done in advance of election, but there is a recommendation here for us to be directed to draft that policy for future review. So I leave that with you for consideration and further discussion. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
It looks like we have some questions. You don't, Councillor Bigger, you have a question?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I am going to make a motion. Again, that council direct the CAO to draft an elected official political activity policy for future review as he's just described.
Okay, second by Councillor Thompson. On the question. Councillor Olson, on the question? I do have a question, so I'll remove myself from the chair. It has to do with the policy statement. I've got to bring it up. Just bear with me. I'm a little behind on this. Do you remember, Mr. Watson, where exactly that was?
In the policy around unpaid leave?
Yeah, the question was on the policy statement. It says it uses the word against, and I wanted to change that wording. So have you found it? Yeah. I'll have the clerk read it for you so you can hear the policy statement.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This is the policy statement from version 2 in your package, and it states, Quispamsis balances the rights of its employees to participate in political activity against the town's interest in maintaining an apolitical workplace.
Oh, I'm going to have Mr. Watson answer that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I'm just respectful of the comment that you had made to us earlier today about that, and we're happy to adjust language there just modestly, so it would instead of read political activity against the town's interest, it would read instead political activity with the town's interest, just to avoid any adversarial connotation that the word against might bring. So I appreciate the comment, and we're happy to make that modest editorial change.
Thank you, and I'm still out of the chair, and I still have one more question, and it has to do, I wanted to discuss what it means for an employee if they've taken a leave and the results are challenged, and they get into, we heard today from Elections New Brunswick that there's a 10-day, and then if it's challenged, it could be another 10 days, and so what happens at that point with if somebody has taken an unpaid leave and all of a sudden there's challenges, could be up to 30 days in challenges. So what do we do then with, how does the employee manage that?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Appreciate the question. So in short, The language of the policy reads that the unpaid leave period commences on the first day of the election period and continues until the election results have been officially declared. The official declaration is dependent on the results of any recount and/or judicial review that could be required in any particular election area. So it is possible that somebody would be on an extended leave pending the results of that of the recount or judicial review if one was required. That said, the provisions do allow for an employee who is required to take the unpaid leave to be paid out their benefit hours in advance of that leave starting, to provide them the buffer that they feel necessary against the duration of that time. So it would be up to them to direct the use of their available benefit hours to either extend well beyond what they expect to require, or just just kind of the core amount of time that would typically be required for an election result to be determined.
Thank you very much. I'll return back to the chair, Councillor Thompson. So we're ready to vote? Okay, please vote. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Watson and staff, for getting this done. So we're on to correspondence. So correspondence, we have a letter from Councillor Miller. So I'm going to ask Councillor Miller to expand on his letter. And please note that we do have under reports a letter from Minister Long. So Mr. Miller, please. Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And just for those that aren't doing it, I would encourage you to go to GNB website and you can get all the announcements sent to your email. So that's how I see what's happening with all the funding announcements. So it's automatic. So I guess it's kind of a repeat of what I've done the last 3 meetings is just to see what's going on. I want to make sure everybody else in council knows what's happening. The ones that I started looking at, and the last 2 that came out were Grand Bucktouche. They've got $523,000 from RDC. The feds gave them $784,000, and the municipality put in a couple $100,000. So they're only funding 17%. Edmonton, just February 27th, got $1.4 million for upgrading of their arena, which is refrigeration, et cetera. Those are all things we do every year. We spend about $800,000 on our rigs. So, and then, and Minister Long's note, and that's exactly what it is. It's frustration because we applied for the Housing Accelerator Fund. We applied for the second Housing Accelerator Fund. We applied for whatever the next one was. We still got nothing, and now they're doing a new Building Canada Community Strong Fund. So, and I just also wanted to point out is, I look around every other community, and I put in a couple snippets in this note. So in St. John, there's a thing called the Green Infrastructure Stream. I have no idea what that is, but St. John got 15.5 million from the feds and 12.9 from the province. So they got quite a bit of money. I'm not saying they didn't deserve it. Hampton got 14 million from the feds and the province for theirs. Grand Bay got 1.6 million, I think, for the Housing Accelerator Fund. Rossay, and I've already previously talked about Rossay, got over $16 million. And Memram Cook got over $16 million. And when I look at, we just talked about it earlier, all the infrastructure we're doing. Our budget's going up higher than everybody else's, but also our debt's going up. And so just imagine if we had that $16 million. I'm just looking at our local communities. You also have to remember, Quispamsis is the 5th largest community in all of New Brunswick, and we don't have water. We've been asking for water. We've got promised water, and nothing seems to be happening. And so my only recourse right now is to continually talk about it. And because think of it, if we had $16 million in our bank account, we wouldn't be talking the same way we're doing right now. Because if we stay the way we're going, and this was from our previous budget meetings, 10% of our debt is going to be, 10% of our budget is going to be our debt payments if we continue on this current road. But if you had $16 million in the bank, we just need to be treated fairly. We pay just as much income tax or more. We're the 5th largest community. Yes, there was a news thing that we have the lowest per per person tax, but we don't have all the industry either, right? So that gets into there. And I guess I'm a little bit disappointed is in the political front is prior to the election, everybody comes in, even our ex-premier, hey, just ask me for money for water, I'll be there, I'll help you. Minister Long, I've got it nailed down. That was last year. He sat in this council chamber, videos from outside the council chamber, right at my front door, same thing. And I know they're trying, but getting zero. We've got zero yet again. We got a ramp, I think, going to at the Qplex. We need substantial funding. We didn't get any funding for even the bus trial we did. Edmonton got $10 million. So there's something not working right. So my ask is, and I appreciate the letter from Mr. Long, and he says he knows our frustration, but I would like to see our elected officials, we have 2 MLAs and one MP, not to come here the week before the election or 2 weeks for the election. I would like them to come on a regular basis. So I would really like to see them come to council and tell us a little bit about what are their plans, what are their progress, what's happening. We all understand things can happen, but 2 years ago when we planned the Hampton Road, we're pretty sure we're going to get money. We spent all this money on the consultants for the Housing Accelerator Fund. I'm not saying it was bad spend, but we did everything we're supposed to. Then we redid it again. Then we redo it again. We click off every box, and Minister Long, when he was here, said we didn't get it because the provincial or the PCs weren't pushing for us, but he was going to push for us. So I really don't know what's going on, but I know we're still at zero. And I know I talked about it for 3 months in a row, but we just had another budget come pass. We had a budget in November, said, hey, stay tuned, something would happen in November. Well, that didn't happen. I think the budget just got passed again up in Ottawa. We still don't have anything, and it's now go and look at this new Canada Community Building Strong Fund. We're not, in my opinion, we're not getting our just deserves, especially, I did a letter last year that said everybody that got housing accelerator funds from Edmundston to, not Edmundston, Campbellton, Ketterket, everyone else in like Grand Bay, they deserve it. But what about us? So I would really, really appreciate if we could talk to our MPs and MLAs, we have 2 of them here, and come to talk to us at council and not just during election time. I would really appreciate that because I think we've been doing everything behind the scenes for many years, and I know we're working our butts off in the background, and we're doing that, but it's not working. So we need to put a bit more pressure and public pressure because, again, for anybody watching this, again, we're down to zero. But we decided not to wait to do our Hampton Road to get the water in. We decided not to wait to do many things, but maybe that's the issue is, well, Quispamsis is going to do it anyways. We don't need to give them money. So, but our debt is going to keep going because all these projects we have to do, and we're not getting help. So I guess I'm just looking for to have our MLAs and MPs come to talk to us, not just on election day, but have a regular meeting with us just to see what's happening because I do feel that we're not getting our fair share. And that's my personal opinion, but that's why I will keep bringing these up every time I see more announcements because when I'm told there's no money, but then I'm like, wow, all this just happened. And you got 16 million and there's this green infrastructure stream. What's that? Well, that's just not a federal stream because 15.5 came from the feds and 12.9 came from the province. So again, I know I'm a record repeating here, but it's just, I'm going to keep repeating it as I keep seeing them. So thank you.
Okay. Councillor Olson, you had a question or you want to
Yes.
comment?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would just like to share Councillor Miller's frustrations because I know that every time I get a chance to speak, I speak about our Qplex funding where we get 3 million each. And at the Garcelon and St. Stephen, they got 7.2 million each. And when they did the oneplex in Dieppe, I think they got about 19 or 20 million. And so I guess that we pay the same types of taxes, maybe more in some cases. But I'd be prepared to second a motion if Councillor Miller wanted to invite the 2 MLAs and the MP on a quarterly basis. Whatever is appropriate. I just threw that out there for a number, whether it's semi-annual or whatever. Yeah, I think that we just have to try and move as respectfully as possible, but just letting everybody know our frustrations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. And I too, everybody wants something to move. It needs to move. And we don't have privy to when people put in an application or how long they've been waiting, or, you know, we don't have that information on other municipalities. But when you see the announcement, you go, yes, we're waiting. And so I appreciate your advocacy. There's nothing wrong with that. And I wanted, you know, they know. And so I'm going to ask Ian Watson to speak to this, because every chance I get, and I'm in front of one of our MLAs or our MP, I bring it up, and I'm sure each one of you do. Like, if you get the opportunity to you're in front of them, you bring it up. So I don't think it's lost on them that we're speaking very loudly with our voice. But some things take time, processes. I don't know what it is either. None of us know. But Mr. Watson, I know that he's been on top of it for the last, I don't know how many months, or what have we been at this now for 2 years, trying to get the water? So I'm just going to let Mr. Watson comment on that. And they're always welcome to come to us, to come to our council. I mean, we want them to come to our council and engage with us. And so it's an open door policy. You know, do we need to set it in stone? I don't know. But I certainly, I know that there's contact with Mr. Watson on a regular basis and with the mayor on a regular basis. So maybe that's the vehicle that should continue that way. But like I said, I would welcome them to come and have a chat with us too. So Mr. Watson, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to council. Boy, I'm reverb king here tonight, sorry. I appreciate this conversation very much, and I think there's a couple of themes that have come up in this evening's conversation I just want to build on a bit. The first is partnership. I believe firmly that we're in this together with our provincial and our federal counterparts, and that success will be our shared success. I'm not interested in casting aspersions against what either another municipality is receiving or not receiving, or what the federal or provincial government is offering or not offering. I don't think that's the path of success. I think our path of success is to continue to demonstrate that we're willing partners, which means we have skin in the game too, but we do need help to achieve some of these major projects that council has been wrestling with over the last while, and will continue to, because yes, the Hampton Road project is one, but there are certainly, as you know, others in the hopper here that will require council's consideration in the near future. The second is the ongoing advocacy piece, and just to put a finer point on that, I think it's fair to say that in my conversations with Minister Long's office, which have been as recent as yesterday, there's a shared acknowledgement that this is a priority project. This is not a case of requiring us to convince the federal or our provincial partners on the value of the project. It's around finding the funds in order to flow to us, either inside or outside of the formal funding mechanisms that are in place, be it half or shift. So I remain cautiously optimistic. I think maybe that's a fault of mine, but I am certainly not giving up on the possibility of there being federal and or provincial support for Hampton Road. We need to know soon though, clearly, because we have agreed to put shovels in the ground. So we need to get that squared away, I would suggest this month. So, the time is certainly ticking, and certainly, again, our partners at the federal and provincial level are well aware of that time pressure. I do understand also that MP Long is making a housing announcement on Friday in the area, and that will allow them to continue some face-to-face advocacy with the federal housing minister at the same time. So I think, we need to continue being supportive, strong partners, and the advocacy is welcome in the spirit of partnership, because we all see the value of the Hampton Road project as well as some of the others that we have on the docket. So thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Councillor Luck, you have a comment?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. First, I want to thank Councillor Miller for keeping this on our agenda, because it is a very important topic. I do remember having a conversation amongst councillors when we did have our MLAs and our MP come during, like just before the election, and we said how valuable it was to hear from them. And we actually said, wouldn't this be great if we had them come more often? So I do really appreciate the hard work the mayor and our CAO and others around the table have been doing behind closed doors in terms of advocacy. But I do think, you know, it only goes so far, and I have a feeling, you know, in terms of having someone come and have an open discussion in public, you know, a different feel to that conversation might happen. So again, I don't want to downplay all the hard work that's happened already, but I do think it's a different venue. And I know it was very valuable to have them come and talk to us before the election when there was a few more promises flowing than there are today. So I would also be in support of, you know, building that into the process so we build some relationships. And there's two-way in an open public forum so that we can share with our elected officials what some of our concerns are, and they can also speak openly in a public forum to how they're working with us to address some of them. I just think it's a different feel than potentially in a room with closed doors and no one around. So anyway, I just wanted to thank Councillor Miller for bringing that up, because I think we're all very frustrated that we haven't seen the same love that some of the other municipalities have. And, you know, we are continuing to move forward with it, but incurring the debt because of that. So anyway, that's
Thank you, Councillor
Thanks.
Luck, for your comments. So maybe I would like to suggest that Mr. Watson take the note of invitations going out, not maybe a motion, but just let them know that we'd love to have them anytime. Send an invitation out. Say, if you'd like to come and visit, we'd love to have you. Okay, well, thank you very much. And for the conversation, thank you, Councillor Miller. And so we're on to proposed remuneration. So sorry. Oh, planning advisory, yes, okay. Planning advisory, somebody prepared to make a motion on this? Planning advisory? You are? Beth, you're ready to make a motion on this? Councillor Thompson, please.
Whereas a notice has been published on the Town of Quispamsis website pursuant to Section 15.3 and 15.4 of the Local Governance Act, and whereas Planning Advisory Committee Bylaw Amendment Number 053-01 received first and second reading at the February 17th, 2026 regular meeting. Now therefore be it resolved, Council give third and final reading to an amendment to bylaw number 053, a bylaw of the municipality of Quispamsis respecting the Planning Advisory Committee as outlined in amendment number 053-01.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Olson. On the question. Councillor Luck, you have a question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. When I was going through it, I mean, I know it's great that it does refer to another one in terms of, you know, it makes it easier to update. But one of the questions I had, and I know that there's kind of a fine line, and I didn't know in terms of inclusion, exclusion criteria and any bias, you know, in terms of like just having that in our policy around, you know, and it's hard, we live in a small town, but at the same time, I guess, I don't know if this policy, because it's planning and advisory, if there should be any inclusion or exclusion criteria because of maybe the types of work that people do and, you know, conflict of interest, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw it out there kind of as a question. Maybe it doesn't need to be there, but I could see some potential issues, perhaps.
I'm going to go to Mr. Coburn to give us some insight. He knows the PAC the best, just whether or not that's necessary.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through you to Councillor Luck. So the PAC bylaw is enacted in accordance with the Community Planning Act with respect to providing the framework from which Planning Advisory Committee can be formed. The PAC has a procedural policy which governs how they conduct their business. And within that policy, it outlines, similar to council in terms of conflicts of interest, sort of conduct within the meetings. So in terms of the inclusion, exclusion, backgrounds, it would be based on the agenda items or things that are becoming before the committee by which they would review, and then they would declare conflicts of interest, or if there are other reasons for which they feel they should remove themselves from that particular item, they have that ability. So that would be sort of the framework in which they operate. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, it would sort of still fall in lines with those types of things. And then in terms of the local governance commission, if there are issues or those types of things, in terms of how decisions were made, if it was felt that a decision was made and there was potential for a conflict of interest, then there's still those avenues that are available in terms of appeals regarding decisions that are made by the Planning Advisory Committee. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. We have a motion. Could please vote? Okay, motion carried, 7-0. We're on to propose remuneration for council number 018. And I'm going to ask Mr. Watson again to speak on this as he's done the work on it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to members of council. The work has not been mine alone, for sure. We've had legal assistance as well as assistance in discussion with the clerk and with other members of the senior team. So thanks to all who have had their hands here, as well as your hands, because we've had discussion around this one, as you know already. The remuneration bylaw draft that you have before you has included matters that we've discussed to date. So that includes the timing of the review. We said we would try to do a review prior to each election. Link to the staff travel policy, just to make it clear that council is subject to the same travel policy and restrictions as staff are, and to avoid the need to try to define that separately. The cap on inflationary increases, which we're suggesting be 5%. On the basis of a historical review of CPI over the last several years, and allowance for an individual member to exceed their allowance by up to 20%, provided that the overall budget allows, and provided that both the CAO and mayor, or if the mayor's asking, the deputy mayor, are signatories to that request. I would only offer that in our final check-in with legal counsel, they had noted that 20% overage allowance does provide some latitude for the mayor and CAO to approve without any formal guidelines for that approval. But the safeguard here is that 2 signatures are required. One's an elected official and one's staff. And both would need to agree on the merits of the proposed additional expense in advance of that being incurred before approving it. So we believe that provides sufficient oversight, but we can circle back on that if needed. I didn't feel good about not representing the comment from our legal counsel before bringing it to you. So the draft amendment is included in your package for consideration of first and second reading if you're so inclined. And otherwise, further discussion is welcome.
Thank you very much. Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd move first reading be given to remuneration bylaw amendment number 018-10.
Seconder by Councillor Thompson. On the question, Councillor Bigger.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a little bit of clarity on the item regarding the possible surpassing of any individual councillor or mayor's travel budget. We have pretty standard kind of annual conferences that people try to attend. We know that the costs related to, FCM tends to happen in large urban centers, and the cost of staying in those places, continues to rise like it does everywhere else, I guess. And it's easy to come up against that limit, I think, probably. But I I struggle a little bit with the equitable kind of nature of what's proposed here about, I guess, I mean, historically and maybe statistically, not everybody travels to everything that occurs. And so from that perspective, it seems, I guess, practical enough to maybe to assume that not everyone will leverage an opportunity to attend something, and as such, the budget for, traveling, whether, for educational purposes or to attend conferences, municipal conferences, whatever, it's not going to always be an even spend by everybody on everything. And so in that regard, maybe it works out. And maybe it is such a rarity, generally speaking, that it's sort of not really something that's likely to happen. If that's the case, I wonder why we even bother considering it, though. And I just, what happens if we run afoul of kind of the caps related to, spending of this kind? And like, do people who are wholly invested in making the most of an opportunity to attend something, to advance their insights or their capacity to better serve the residents, not get to attend something because the mayor and CAO have previously approved that someone else could take up some of their budget, as it were, in an overage cost because somebody else went to something else? Do you see what I'm getting at? Unless I'm misunderstanding fundamentally what we're speaking about here, I'm just not quite sure. I like everything else about these changes. I'm just a little confused about what drives this as a concept in the first place. Is it because, it's more expensive to stay in Toronto than it used to be, or and our budget for that sort of thing doesn't match up, or what? So I'm a little unsure about it. I'm uncomfortable to vote in favor of the motion currently under that circumstance.
Mr. Watson, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thanks for the question, Councillor Bigger, and to others. In summary, and to go back to the history here, the request from Council was for us to introduce some kind of flexibility to allow for overages, because the current response is we can't reimburse you for more than your current allowance. So it would remain Council's choice to attend an event, but they would be capped at the total available budget allocation without any flexibility. So recognizing that the historical total budget pool for all of council has been typically underspent, and versus the alternative of increasing the overall budget for every individual councillor, which would then be artificial and would result in us being under budget later, and people question, why? Well, wait a minute, why would you even budget that much if that wasn't going to be spent? Then this was felt to be the middle ground that would offer that latitude without automatically bumping everybody up to a level that was beyond what we would expect to be spent on the basis of the history of the organization. So certainly we're open to either, frankly, the administratively simple option is say, here's your allowance, and if you choose to go above it, that's your call. You can certainly attend, but we can only, as a municipality, we can only reimburse you to the total current amount for expense reimbursement, adjusted by the CPI as described in the bylaw. So that would be the administratively simple thing to do, but we did recognize that there was an interest in just offering a little bit of flexibility for those who may have an additional expense in a given year, recognizing that would still require the total budget to not have been exceeded, and it would require two signatories to provide some safeguards around appropriate use of the funds.
Well, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions. 5, so yes, go ahead, Councillor Bigger. And I'll put your mic on. There you go.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. And so this is obviously driven somewhat by some sense of historically what's been happening, perhaps more recently. And there was a change made in remuneration for council overall with the travel and learning budget versus stipend some time ago anyway, and there was a rebalancing of that some time ago that lowered that amount in terms of what's generally available for any one councillor or mayor to travel. I appreciate very much the kind of middle ground logic. I just want to be sure that there's been some sense of, is there some comparative kind of appreciation for what's happening in other jurisdictions in regards to this? Are we outliers in this regard? I mean, we're not the only municipality running up against these kinds of inordinate and inflationary costs related to council travel for conferences and things like that. And I fully endorse the value of attending things like that. I've taken advantage of that stuff myself and felt like I've become a better counselor because of it. But are we the only ones that you're aware of that are kind of, struggling with this? Thanks.
Mr. Watson, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Bigger, for the question. Yes, we're the only ones that I'm aware of that are introducing this degree of flexibility. However, I would offer that we did review both remuneration rates and expense rates available to councillors and deputy mayors and mayors in other New Brunswick jurisdictions as part of this review.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to Councillor Olson and then Councillor Donovan. Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This is an annual event that's discussed because of the rising costs of travel to these conferences and that. And I know that we're all talking about basically FCM, and I think it's a great conference to learn the most up-to-date information that's going around and everything. And I agree with the 20% fluctuation there, the allowance for that increase, and I respect the inclusion of that restriction to keep it at maximum 20%. So there's some history to the rising costs, and we haven't looked at this before in the past, but we've been awfully close to the maximum in previous years.
Thank you. Councillor Donovan.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I do also agree with the new addition of the 20% cap. For those of us who do travel to some of the events at FCM, they can get very expensive. They can, you've got hotel costs, which historically I've always stayed at Airbnbs because they're far cheaper than staying at a hotel. You've got your ticket price for FCM, which continues to rise by leaps and bounds every single year, as well as your airfare to those locations, not including your remuneration for meals and certain expenses like that. So when you bundle that up with, which is an important event, people take a lot away from that and bring it back to the town. You bundle that with the UMMB conference, which is even more important as a local conference. You also have to remember at that conference, you have to pay for room, you have to pay for travel. So, just speaking from personal experience, your budget gets wiped out very easily. And then you kind of get stuck towards the end of the year once you get back from FCM and you start planning to go to UMMB, you start wondering, well, okay, I can afford the ticket price of UMMB, but then that means I'll have to drive to Fredericton, drive back home, drive to Fredericton, drive back home. That's the only way you can actually make that work in your budget. So I think I understand the concept that Councillor Bigger was bringing up, and I do appreciate it. I do think this is a fair process that allows those that do take advantage of learning more. It allows them to be able to do that without sort of being cornered into a corner. So that's just my opinions.
Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I'm actually in favor of it as well because the conversation won't be until that very last event. So you'll already know whether we have money or not, so you will not be taking away from anybody else from the way I understand it. So I think that's a great reason. And I think that for Councillor Bigger, I think he was inferring that or thought that somebody might be able to take mine, but it really won't be that discussion. It'll be at the end of the year if there's any extra funds over for people that haven't used it. I'm okay with the way we do it right now. I mean, I haven't been going to the events and for work reasons, et cetera. But I also think I don't want to get into, or maybe the next council can figure this one out. There are some councils, I've talked to some other people that are involved in different councils, where you're allowed to go twice a year or twice during your term to FCM. So they have it, or during an election year, only the mayor and deputy mayor are allowed to go because it's short notice for flights. So there are some that do things like that, but I think currently the amount that go and the amount that don't go, I think we've got that flexibility, and I do believe in it. Well, we all know that the total budget has never been used. So, and it is true, which everybody said, the last few years, like I could go to Montreal 5 years ago and get a hotel for $130, $150. I'm lucky to go for $350, and I'm not downtown. So it has changed a lot. So I'm fully supportive, and I do not believe this would affect anybody else's choice. And if that happens, then there's going to be a hard no at the end, because like, no, you can't go more. So thanks.
And we're going to finish off with Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you to Councillor Bigger for bringing it up. I am in favor of the 20% if it works the way Councillor Miller laid out. However, the way it's written, potentially, if we all won $1 million and went off to an island somewhere and a whole new crew of people came in and started reading the policy, that's why I always look at policy, would they know, based on how it's written, that's the intention? Because the way it's written is that potentially the first two, the ask potentially would take another person's money. I know that I would like to think that wouldn't happen. We have a new council coming in, and maybe everyone on the new council will want to go to everything. So I don't know if it's just a tweak to the policy so that it's either like Q4 or Q3, like either that or that it comes back to council, because you're absolutely right. For the most part, the entire bucket never gets spent. So why not allow someone else that wants to use the money to use the money, as long as the person that wants to use the money can still use it when they go to use it and it's not already spent. And I just wonder if the way it's written, potentially, if someone else was reading this, could it be interpreted that, if you were first to the ask and two people agree that yes, you can have that extra money, and then everyone else wants to spend their budget, someone at the end is going to lose out.
Okay.
So anyway.
Thank you. Mr. Watson, did you want to comment on that? And then we'll wrap it up, or are you good?
I think I need to think about that. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And this is being proposed for first and second tonight, right?
Right.
So, I think
We have for first reading, we have it, let's do first.
yeah, and maybe pause there, and we could come back for second and third, or second and then third at a future time, because there is a point to be made there, and I'm not sure I have an easy answer for you, because I actually interpret it that would be possible. That by virtue of us affording somebody the allowance to use more early in the year, for example, that does reduce the total pool available for those later in the year. The practical consequence has been it's never been an issue. And that's the precedence around which we have built this. So it may also be a bit of a leap of faith to say, let's try it. If it becomes a problem, we'll rescind it or adjust it. But let's not go to the end just yet. Let's maybe get through first reading, and we'll happily take it back and just give that one more thought.
Yeah, I like that idea of taking it back, because it's not a problem till it's a problem. So could I have the vote on the first reading, since it's already on? Please vote now.
May I suggest doing the second reading as well? We can still do the same thing. We'll have to wait another meeting to do the third reading.
Okay. The clerk has brought up a good point. If we don't do the second reading now, we'll have to wait another meeting. So let's do the second. And so could I, Councillor Olson,
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd move second reading be given to excessive noise, and that's not it. I guess what we're experiencing has been excessive noise. Proposed second reading be given to remuneration bylaw amendment number 018-10.
okay, seconded by Councillor Miller on the question. Seeing there is none, please vote. That's great. Okay, motion carried, 7-0. So, and Mr. Watson, we'll leave that with you. So we're going on to the proposed excessive noise bylaw. So, here we go here. Mr. Colburn's going to speak to this, to give us some insight as to the changes of the bylaw 069. Mr. Colburn, please.
Thank you. Have me back. It's been a couple of hours. Councilor Olson apparently didn't want me back. He wanted to move right to a second reading of the bylaw, and I was all for that. That would save us a whole lot of time and energy on this one. Proposed excessive noise and nuisance bylaw, bringing it back to council. It came to council in April of 2025. Wow, what a time go. So this bylaw is a new bylaw. It will repeal the existing noise bylaw, bylaw number 23. So when we brought it to council in April of 2025, council provided staff with some feedback on the draft bylaw. At that time, there were a couple of areas that they wanted staff to explore. At that time was around the fees and penalties and the abatement fee, which I will get to, as well as the concept of special exemptions, or temporary exemptions, sorry, where applications could be made to the town, and then the town would consider those applications, but the language in the bylaw, draft bylaw at that time said that it would come back to council, and council would ultimately make a decision. So we've looked at that as well. And then we looked at, I believe it was the scope of which some of those temporary exemptions covered in terms of did they relate to backyard garden parties and those types of things. So we've explored that as well. So I'll just very quickly run through just sort of some of the highlights of the draft language, and then just sort of give a concept or an overview of what we're hoping to achieve through this new bylaw. So again, it's to modernize a 25-year-old noise bylaw, to expand the definition in the definition section by introducing 10 new definitions to provide some clarity and guidance as we interpret the bylaw. To expand the bylaw to include the aspect of nuisance, and that would further relay into public nuisance and public disturbance. So our current bylaw specifically focuses on noise and the aspect of noise, whereas this one will bring forward another level, which is the aspect of nuisance into that. Introduce language around operations of drones within the municipality, getting into an avenue for registered organizations and charities to make an application for a temporary exemption to the bylaw, as well as restructuring of penalties and fees. So in terms of the penalties and fees, what's being brought forward is an administrative penalty, which is provided for in the Local Governance Act, whereby a way this will operate is if the municipality receives a complaint, we obviously, as we've discussed many times with council, our first is to make a first visit or to follow up on the complaint and to get some background information. So that usually means attending the property. So when we attend the property, and if we felt at that time it is a valid, warranted complaint, then we would obviously provide an educational or a notice sort of to the property owner or to the situation to advise them that they're in contravention of the bylaw and that appropriate measures need to be taken to make sure the complaint or the situation is addressed. If we then further return to follow up another complaint, then there's a penalty that can be applied as a voluntary penalty, $250 that would be applied. So they can come and pay that and everything is good. If there's a third visit, then there's a penalty of $500 that can be paid. And if those three occurrences occur within a 12-month period, there's an abatement fee of $1,500 that's applied as well. So there are tiers of penalties that can be paid. Obviously, if all those fail, then we make an application to the court to obviously look for fines and penalties under the Provincial Offences Act, where we're suggesting the minimum fine is $1,500 with a maximum of $2,100 as per the PAPA. So within their aspect as well, in terms of the excessive noise and nuisance, we've identified particular situations where they're exempt from the bylaw. So things like emergency vehicles, people just doing work on their property, given a specific hours, basically from 7 till 9 at night. Obviously, the detonation of fireworks, that is very much the same as the language that in the current bylaw. We did take this bylaw to both the police and the fire for their input, and then the fire department recommended that we would include language that points to the Fire Prevention Act as it relates to the detonation of fireworks, which we have done through this process. Drones, we have, obviously, if there's work that's associated with authorized work associated with the town, then they're exempt from that the bylaw. However, in terms of personal use, we have restricted it to anything to do with commercial, industrial, or institutional types of uses. Again, sports activities. In terms of the bylaw allows for temporary exemption. So the way that mechanism works is if you are a registered organization, registered charity, and you're seeking to have an event, that you can make an application to the municipality for an exemption. We have established in the bylaw criteria around what is required in that application, and then required criteria around how we review and make that decision. Obviously, we will provide notice in the bylaw right now to residents wherever that particular event is taking place, up to 250 meters. However, there is discretion that we can increase that radius depending on the nature of the event and what would be anticipated to be the scope of noise associated with that particular event. It provides the opportunity that if there is a significant amount of objection, then we can actually come to council and advise them that this is the situation, how would you wish to guide accordingly. So, but most of the applications as they're designed would be handled at a staff level based on the criteria that's within on the bylaw itself. I would just quickly jump over to the bylaw, and it's important to note the purpose of the bylaw. So, okay, so it's not showing on my screen. So, it's to protect, preserve, and promote the safety, health, and welfare, peace, and quiet of residents of the Quispam through reduction, control, and prevention of excessive noise and nuisance, which unreasonably disturbs and endangers the comfort, repose, health, peace, or safety of reasonable persons of ordinary sensitivity. So it establishes a framework in which we would obviously operate and govern and review any of these particular complaints. So one of the important things in this bylaw is the nuisance factor. So by definition, a nuisance means any activity which substantially or unreasonably interferes with the person's use and enjoyment of the property, with the use of enjoyment of a highway, park, or other public places. And then it outlines the criteria. So basically we need things like noise, vibrations, odor, illumination. So if somebody's blasting lights, then that becomes a nuisance. So what this allows us to do is, even if you have a complaint that at one point, I can't stand the noise, then now it also allows us to look at those complaints from a nuisance perspective. So if somebody's repetitively doing the same thing and you're becoming a nuisance and you're disturbing the person's peace and enjoyment of their property, then we can come at it from both angles as well versus a noise factor. So that gives us that ability to address those things. Public nuisance deals with defamation or any destruction of public property, excessive language and those types of things in public spaces, fighting and those activities like that nature in public places. So we brought that into this bylaw as well. So overall, we feel that this bylaw at this stage is a balance in terms of the purpose, keeping the safe and peace and people being able to enjoy their property, but also from the factor of an administrative being able to work with the property owners, being able to work with the situation from an educational perspective, and then move forward into that sort of that punitive stage. So we feel that there is opportunity for that. And it also recognizes the situation of where there will be requests, there will be activities, there will be community events, that there will be temporary noise associated with it, but allows us to set conditions around that with an anticipated time frame for when that activity would start and end. And it also allows us, this particular draft allows to identify just recognizing the changing environment in the world. When you have a large gathering of people, it also includes, once you get more than 50 people, that you have to provide a safety plan as part of your request for an exemption. So you have to look at traffic, you have to look at control, you have to look at safety of the people that are participating in that, and that would involve obviously reaching out to the police to assist, and they would be made aware of that particular event. So that's included in this bylaw as well. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I'll leave it there, and if there's any questions.
Just stay there, we'll do some questions. Councillor Luck.
No, Your Worship. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just have a quick question. First of all, lots of work went into this, so thank you very much to you and staff for doing it. One thing I couldn't see, so I'm going to give you the situation and maybe you can tell me where it would fit. I think it might fit under special case exemptions. So you have a neighbor that works at 8 o'clock and is out at 6 a.m. with their tractor or their snow blower. So it's before 7, making lots of noise. And they do it on a regular, this isn't the case, I love my neighbors, but I'm just thinking, how would this, I guess I'm looking at, would this fall into an exemption? Because that is the reality in the world we live in, especially 6 months is winter, where there will be people working their snow blowers at like ungodly hours in the morning because they have to get to work. And that's just the reality of, but I'm just wondering how, if that does come up and someone is complaining, is there something in here that would cover them so that they can still snow blow at that time? Or tractor plow?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. So the bylaw provides special exemptions, and one of the clauses in there is reasonable upkeep or repairs of private property between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. So if we get calls about an individual who's every day doing that, then obviously we would reach out and say, okay, please help us understand why it needs to be at 6 a.m. And if there's special circumstances, then we would get that information. We would obviously relay it to the person who provided us with the situation, and we would try to work out that particular event. But at some point in time, if there's no reason other than it's most convenient for me and this is when I'm going to do it and continue to do it, then obviously we would look at moving through those measures in terms of penalty. So there's an approach of gathering information, understanding situation, and then obviously addressing it through that avenue, and then working together with obviously the property owner and the person who's lodged the concern. So within the bylaw, it does set that framework. So if somebody says, it's 6 a.m., why can't you wait till 7? Well, I have to get to work by 6:30, and if we're having snow every day, then but no, I understand, and it's very practical, and those are the calls that we would get. So we would operate within the framework, get a sense of the situation, and try to work with it that way. Yep.
Okay, I'll just remove myself from the chair and Councillor Thompson, and I'll just ask the question. Mine has to do with the, if you're found guilty and you have to pay a penalty, what happens if it's the opposite and someone is continually calling about a neighbor and you've been out there and you found that, do you keep going every time you get a phone call, or how are you going to deal with that? It's just sort of the opposite.
So through to you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to the rest of the council. So again, it goes back to, first of all, getting a sense of the nature of the complaint, getting a sense of the actual situation with that property owner, and then if the situation is such that what's the conduct or what's being happening is within the scope of the bylaw, and then you have a person who's always just simply complaining, then we do have the ability to switch it the other way. You are now becoming the nuisance, right? So we can approach it that side as well. There's a point at which what you perceive as the situation is not the situation, there's another issue. So we would look at it from that perspective as well. So that's where you get into that nuisance factor as well, because if the complainant is not substantive, and now that person is always getting visits from the town or is trying to use their property, then they're not enjoying the property or the wealth, the property they have. So that's the perspective of this, is whether there's an activity that's affecting me, but just by nature of complaining and the complaints are not substantive, that in itself becomes a nuisance as well, for which we can apply this bylaw.
Okay. And my second question was, you said an event 50 or plus. An example, an outdoor wedding. Would they have to apply to have an outdoor wedding and a safety plan in place? Or is that still considered private property? And you
So,
can-
yep, through to you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to the rest of the council. So the way the special exemptions, the temporary exemptions work is for registered organizations or charities. So if somebody calls and says, I'm having a wedding, it's 100 people here, okay, our recommendation to you would be you won't need an exemption. However, given the number of people, you might want to reach out to police and fire if you're parking to make sure all the mechanics is kosher with their operations if they need to be there. And it also keeps them just unaware of there is such an event happening in the municipality from a communications perspective. But the exemptions are tied to registered organizations and charities that would have larger events, and they're capped at 2 every 12 months. So basically you can have them twice a year.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bayer.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I move first reading be given to excessive noise and nuisance bylaw number 069.
Seconder, Councillor Miller. Thank you. Please vote. Motion carried 7-0. There was two, isn't it? Could I have somebody for second reading, please? Councillor Bigger.
Let's do it again. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I move second reading be given to excessive noise and nuisance bylaw number 069.
And seconded by Councillor Thompson. On the question, seeing there's none, please vote. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Colburn. I know it's
Thank
been a
you.
lot of work to get this together. Good job. So we're on to new business. So the first one we're talking about tonight is to council to approve the second wave of the Community Investment Awards for July to December 2006. And there's a list of who that's to be awarded to. If you have any questions, or do I have a motion? Councillor Olson?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I move that council approve Community Investment Awards for the July-December 2026 award period to KV Food Basket, 5,000, QMS Reeds, 750, Seabells, 500, St. John Regional Hospital Foundation, 5,000, Valley Line Dance, 300, We Believe, 1,000. Further, that correspondence be sent to all successful and unsuccessful applicants in accordance with the Community Investment Fund Policy number FIN P2025-004.
I have a seconder, Councillor Bigger. Are you seconding that? Okay. On the question, seeing there is none, please vote. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you very much. On to the next request to amend the developers agreement for, oh, we did that one, DeFazio, okay. So we're on to the Ritchie Lake Terrace Phase 2 for 12 residential building. Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd move the council grant assent to the Ritchie Lake Terrace Phase 2 and 3 tentative subdivision plan, subject to execution of the subdivision development agreement, the issuing of a development permit for construction based on approved engineering design drawings as per the subdivision bylaw and town specifications, the LPP requirements for this phase to be met through the setting aside of land as shown in the Phase 2-3 tentative plan.
Thank you very much. Seconded by Councillor Olson. On the question, seeing there is none, please vote. Motion carried 7-0. And so we're on to Kingsview subdivision. Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Move council grant assent to the Kingsview Phase 21 tentative subdivision plan, subject to execution of the subdivision development agreement, the issuing of a development permit for construction based on approved engineering design drawings as per the subdivision bylaw and town specifications. The LPP requirements for this phase to be met through cash in lieu of land in the amount of $4,500.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Miller, thank you very much. On the question, seeing there's none, if you please vote. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you very much. And we're on to respectful workplace policy. And I would ask Mr. Watson to address this, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to the rest of council. Actually, two policies for your consideration here, both of which have been a result of some work done within the HR department and with some assistance from outside counsel. In that we have recognized that there's an opportunity for us to expand upon the previous harassment in the workplace policy that was in place within the employee handbook and develop a more robust and updated respectful workplace policy. It's attached for council's information. It replaces again the harassment section of that handbook. And as a new policy though, this is another one where we would be asking you to confirm the authority for the ongoing approval and management of that. So that's chapter 1 of the story. Chapter 2 of the story is drugs, alcohol, and medication use. It's a revision to an existing policy, and you had provided approval authority for that policy to the CAO and executive team back in April. So that current draft is attached for your information. And we'd always welcome comments if you have thoughts or observations about it that you think deserve our attention or consideration, then we'd certainly welcome those. But really the decision for council tonight is to consider the approval authority for the respectful workplace policy. I certainly welcome any questions or conversation about it, and Cheryl's here as well, so we're all ears.
Olson, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would move that council receive the draft. That council direct the approval and management authority for the respectful workplace policy to the CAO/executive leadership team.
Seconded by Councillor Thompson. On the question, seeing there's none, if you could please vote, please. Motion carried 7-0, and there's a second motion. Council received the draft respectful. Does somebody make that motion for me? Councillor Thompson?
I move the council receive the draft respectful workplace and drugs and alcohol and medication use policies for information.
Seconded by Councillor Bigger. Councillor Olson, do you have a question? No? Okay. Okay, so it's moved and second on the question. There is none. Please vote. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you very much. There's quite a list of reports. Does anybody have a comment or want to bring anything to the attention on the reports? Seeing there's no questions, could I have a motion to accept? Oh, we don't need it? I need it. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. There was no no business arising for committee of the whole. Councillor Donovan has put a motion forward to adjourn. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Olson?
Yep.
Okay. All those in favor, please vote. That would be on you.
I'll sleep just fine.
The vote hasn't gone through yet, so if we could just. We're good, you've got it, okay, it's up 7-0. So thank you, everybody, have a good night, and I know it's, yeah, be careful out there.
Nice, Deputy Mayor. Great job.
Oh, thank you. No, there are a few. There is a few boo-boos.